Mount Vernon needs to close, and the sooner the better. Stretching the closure over 5 years may not be the best interest of the district, taxpayer, or community. However, that is the findings, but there are other things in there, caveats and assumptions. I've also developed a financial analysis for a number of options for Mount Vernon to consider as the school is closed. Tuition only, tuition and purchase of the school, or stay with the RSU. I will be providing that information next Monday night at the Select Board meeting. I will be strongly urging them to create a committee soon who will work with the town and the school board to help hone the financials and impacts on the social fabric of the town. I'd just like to draw your attention to page 2 of the bottom line statement, which is a good summary of where that whole report is at. And I provide that in your emails to you, both reports. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any other folks on this list not related to the budget? All right, step up, please.
My name is Taylor Stevenson. I am a Wayne fresh kindergarten parent. And we also have 2 children that will be coming into the school system in the next few years. I had the opportunity to watch the last meeting and the presentation and read all the documents. And I just wanted to say, I appreciate the board's sacrifices. I know the tumultuous evenings of public service, and I appreciate all the time that you have put into this. But I'm disappointed that we're at where we're at, and we haven't talked to anybody about it yet. There's no formal communication with the parents of the schools that are going to be affected by the kindergarten closings in the fall. There's been no community input on that. And following the long list of evaluations that are going to be done on the strategic plan and the 5-year plan, I don't really understand why we're pushing through year 1 before we've even talked about the plan. And I hope that everybody was aware of what they voted on last week when they voted yes to close the kindergartens in Wayne and Mount Vernon. And again, it's frustrating to be on this side and not have the communication other than watching the meetings. There's kindergarten enrollment's already open, and there's no mention of any of these happenings or plans. So hopefully we can get more answers and have more discussions before it's finalized completely. I don't know if it is finalized or if that's still part of the budget vote, but I think it's worth more discussion.
Thank you. Anyone else not, I think we're getting into budget related items. Some of these things may be answered. These are all budget related, so. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Rachel Criswell. I don't believe this is budget related.
Okay.
I'm a Mount Vernon resident. I'm the mom of a 3rd grader at Mount Vernon Elementary and a 6th grader at Marina Cook. I just wanted to note that I second what Taylor said about the lack of transparency and community input into the plans to close the kindergartens in Mount Vernon and Wayne and the 5-year plan with the consolidation of school. I'm also concerned that closing the kindergartens before the rolling out of the strategic plan is putting the cart before the horse, and kind of makes it a little bit of a done deal before the community and parents have had a chance to provide input. I'll be honest, I found out about this from my 3rd grade son, who was giving me updates on principal plans, and I was sort of appalled that parents hadn't received an official notice or an opportunity to comment. So thank you very much for all your hard work, and I look forward to staying tuned as these meetings progress.
All right, thank you. Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
Hi, my name is Lynette Stinford, and I'm a Wayne resident, and I taught in the district for 25 years. And I just want to echo what's been said. I'm concerned that there hasn't been a lot of public input into these plans, and reflect on the fact that I think it was about 15 years ago, I served on a committee, group of teachers, district-wide, all the stakeholders, community members, parents, board members, and we went through a lengthy process to discuss this very issue, and that was about 15 years ago. And the report's got to be in the records somewhere because it was made to the board. And after weeks of meeting and hours with a district-hired facilitator, there were a lot of different options that were examined. And one of the ones that came up that is nowhere in your plan acknowledged the fact that keeping a school open in each of the towns is a really high priority for most residents, at least 15 years ago, and that there was a way to do it by taking K-1 students and putting them in Mount Vernon, Wayne, and Manchester, and having a central school in Reedfield for the middle grades for 3, 4, and 5. And we went through a lot of analysis, and that was the plan that bubbled to the top at the very end. It was nobody's first choice, but it was most people's second. So I do think that there needs to be more input and more knowledge given to parents that this is happening. I too found out about this last night, and I'm pretty engaged in town, so it was really rather surprising that I don't think people know this is happening, and I certainly don't think they know it's happening next fall. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Ms. Watson, you said you were going to wait? Okay, yep, proceed.
Hi, I'm Sue Spalding. I'm also from Wayne. I spent many years on this school board and on the Wayne School Board when my children were young, so have been a big supporter of this district. I am currently on the, when we did this consolidation, each town was to create a small, we call it an advisory committee. So Wayne has a Wayne School Advisory Committee of 3 people, myself, Teresa Kirchner, who's also here, and David Twitchell, and myself. And we heard nothing about this. It just seems like if you're going to have local school committees, then somebody should be speaking to us about some of the things that are going on and some of these big decisions that are being made. So, and we do meet with, and I no way want to blame the principal for not telling us. I think it probably wasn't her place. But, you know, to think that the board would vote on moving the kindergarten out of Wayne for next year before even talking with the advisory committee, then I'm not sure why we have an advisory committee. So I know this is kind of a budget, but it's mostly about process. I'm concerned about the lack of transparency.
Thank you.
I'm Lloyd Erlin. I'm a member of the select board of the town of Wayne. I put 4 children through the school. And at one level, it doesn't mean a thing to me what you do with them. But at the level of being select board, it means everything. The school is a really important institution in the town. And I would just echo the remarks already made, that for us to hear of it by our child telling us, or indirectly or at inconvenient times, I have no paperwork on it because I heard about it for the first time about 2 days ago. I just think that's wrong, and anything, believe me, I understand the fiscal pressures you go into. I am working on 3 budgets in 1 week: this town, the county, and the school board. So I am really into it. I'm up to here with budgets, but you've got to find another way. You really do. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Additions, adjustments to the agenda by the board or superintendent?
I have an addition to the agenda.
All right.
I would like to add an item to discuss a motion reversing our decision to remove the kindergarten from Wayne and Mount Vernon. And we can add that either before or after the budget workshop, as you think best.
All right. Any other additions or adjustments to the agenda? Any objections to that item being added to the agenda? All right, seeing none, we will add that. We can add that right after, we can add that as C. All right, we are going to go into a budget workshop.
Welcome, Town Select Board members. Tonight, I want to take a few minutes to walk you through where the FY27 budget stands, why your town's assessment is increasing, and what the district is doing about it. We will then open the floor up for discussion. The FY27 second draft budget totals $24,363,273. This is a 2.89% increase over FY26. That's a modest increase, less than inflation, and it reflects significant work by the administrative team to reduce costs since our first draft. In fact, we reduced the budget by $870K after the first budget committee meeting in December. But here's the number your boards are going to hear about. The total local impact across the 4 towns is $1,065,510, a 6.75% increase. And we want to answer the question of why tonight. The short answer is this: the local assessment is increasing because state funding decreased, not because the district spent more. Let me explain how Maine's funding formula works. The state calculates how much each district should spend on education, and then decides how much the state will pay versus how much the community will pay. That split is based on your town's assessed property values. When property values rise, the state assumes your community can afford to contribute more, so the state contributes less. It's a seesaw. What happened in RSU 38? The district-wide 3-year average property valuation rose 16.36%, from $1.42 billion to $1.65 billion. That triggered an 11% cut in state EPS aid, $678,636, less than we received last year. At the same time, the required local match, the minimum each town must contribute by state formula, increased by $665,241. The mill expectation actually went down from 6.10 to 5.645, but higher valuations more than offset that, so every town ends up paying more in dollars. I also want to address a question that sometimes comes up. What about Fayette students? We do receive tuition revenue from Fayette, and we're grateful for it. But Fayette students do not generate state EPS subsidy for RSU 38. Tuition revenue and state aid are 2 different buckets. This is not a one-year blip. As enrollment declines, per pupil state aid declines with it, while fixed operating costs remain largely unchanged. That brings me to the next slide. The table on the left shows what this means for each town. Manchester, Refield, and Wayne are all in the 5 to 6% range. Mount Vernon is higher at 10.63% because their valuation increase drove a proportionally larger share of the subsidy shift. These are formula outcomes, not district decisions. Now, the district's job is to keep costs as low as possible within the constraints of a responsible budget. Here's what we did. We evaluated 12 positions. 5 were eliminated through retirements and resignations, saving $435,766 at no cost beyond the positions themselves. 3 more were eliminated through a formal reduction in force, saving another $174,452 in full compliance with Title 20A and our collective bargaining agreements. A staff reduction eliminates a position, not necessarily a staff member. We have open positions, and we are committed to making every effort to place affected employees where their skills and certifications fit. During lengthy and thoughtful meetings, the administrative team also made $260K in other line adjustments. The budget decisions we've made don't exist in a vacuum. They're a response to 3 forces that are converging at the same time. Enrollment decline. Our elementary enrollment has decreased by 24% since 2018, from 580 to 439 students. The pre-K and kindergarten pipeline this year is the smallest since pre-K began in 2005. We lost 45 students last year alone, the largest single-year drop outside of COVID. And this is not an elementary problem that stays at the elementary level. Those smaller cohorts reach middle school in 2028 and high school in 2031. Aging facilities. All 4 elementary buildings were built or underwent major renovations in the 1950s and 60s. Each carries its own roof, HVAC, plumbing, and electrical systems. Deferred maintenance doesn't disappear, it compounds. Structural funding shift. What we've described on the prior slide is not a one-year problem. Every dollar spent on infrastructure that serves a fraction of its capacity is a dollar we cannot direct toward instruction, programs, and the services that most directly support students. The one-year action plan. On March 11th, the board approved the first concrete step. Beginning July 1st, 2026, pre-K and kindergarten will be offered only at Manchester and Reedfield Elementary. Mount Vernon and Wayne will continue serving grades 1 through 5 fully staffed and fully supported. This one step is designed to be compatible with any decision made through a community-driven strategic planning process, with the Plan to Strategic Plan happening now. The board will vote on the final budget on April 15th, when the health insurance costs are finalized. The annual budget meeting is on May 13th at 7 p.m. in the middle school cafeteria. The town referendum is on June 9th. Between now and April 15th, your boards are the most important link between the school budget and your communities. If residents have questions, and they will, the budget documents made available to you are designed to help you answer them. The most important message to take back: the budget increase is being driven by a shift in the state funding tied to rising property values. The district reduced costs by over $870K since the initial budget committee directives on December 10th. And we have a plan approved by the board that begins aligning our resources with our enrollment reality. Thank you. We are happy to take questions.
All right, thanks. Yeah, any select board members can come up, there's a mic, or they can go up to the podium actually too.
It occurs to me as people were talking about this, what is the status of the, I believe it was 15-year bonding effort that was made several years ago to rebuild several of the schools?
The status of it, meaning, I mean, we're still paying on it. Is that what you're asking?
How many years has it been active?
6 years.
6 years. Thank you.
Tyler, go ahead.
Tyler Dunn, Town of Mount Vernon. It's going to be a tough pill to swallow. We are getting some pushback on the 10%. But I will say, I am encouraged by the fact that you're taking steps where you have declining enrollment to close schools. You know, it's tough to ask the town of Mount Vernon and the other towns to pay to keep a building open with less than 100 students in it. And recognizing Mount Vernon has under 100 and Wayne has under 100. There's operational costs and, you know, $18,000 per student and $21,000 per student over a tuition rate of $14,000 is a hard pill to swallow, you know, for budget-conscious taxpayers. And I'd encourage you to accelerate that timeline. I really would, because I don't know how long Mount Vernon can continue to eat these increases.
Thank you. Mr. Keegan?
Yes, good evening, Mr. Roderick. Sean Keegan, Reedfield Select Board. I don't think anybody wants any schools to close, including all of you up there. I remember coming here 5 years ago, my first year on the Select Board, and the conversation we had was about the maintenance line of the budget. And I thought, wow, we went up 50% in that 1 year. And it was because of our buildings and because of how old they are. So I really appreciate this, especially as a parent with kids in the school where sometimes they can't drink the water in certain rooms because of lead or whatever that is. We have lots of problems with the maintenance of our schools, and I understand that at some point, fiscally, we have to take some sort of action on that. Sure, I'm in Reedfield, so it might sound like I don't care as much because that's not something they're getting other students maybe. It doesn't really matter. I'm grateful that we're having a discussion on how do we continue to develop the schools for all the kids in the future or whoever comes to town. Thank you. I'm grateful that Karen is working with our town manager, making sure those conversations are happening ahead of time so that we have this information. You know, even if a 3% increase on 24 million, right, it's still a huge number now. We're getting to the point where 3% still is hitting everybody's pockets pretty hard. So I appreciate the work you've put into this and how clear some of this documentation is.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Henry Steck, Wayne Select Board. I just had a question. Is there a calculation that we can show people that indicates the savings accrued from the consolidation of the kindergarten this year? How many dollars?
We don't have the exact calculation of a cost-saving measure. I think there's potentially some conflating of understanding of what we were tasked, what we had to do to ensure that we were meeting what the board was asking us to do. The administrative team met for several hours going through multiple scenarios on what makes the most sense while still maintaining quality education and ensuring that we have our staff feeling supported. In that process and really looking at the data and compiling the data and looking at our enrollments, we shifted the conversations to this isn't something being done to us because we financially need to. The narrative switched to this is what we need to do to what's best for students. And so when we're looking at a pre-K class at Mount Vernon with only 2 students, the quality of the education of those individuals are not as rich as if they were in a class interacting with more of their peers from different backgrounds and perspectives. And in addition to that, having teachers have at least one other colleague at that same grade age level to also collaborate and be a thinking partner on. And when we all looked at the numbers of having, with the 3 kindergarten students that from Wayne, they will have 47 students next year at Wayne Elementary. And we have our teachers that have these small class sizes, and they are not able to get the rich experiences as well as being at another school that has a thinking partner and as well as more students to engage in those experiences and resources. And I think the big thing that came out with the administrative team and the principals is we need to do this because this is what's best for kids. So we didn't look at exactly how much that cost, to answer your question, because we were more focused on what we feel is best for kids and thinking about that sustainability of educational quality of what we value at Maranacook.
Hi, Eric Dyer. I'm the Reedfield town manager. I've been town manager for about 10 years now. I'm also a resident of Reedfield and a taxpayer. I've got 2 kids in the school and my wife's a teacher. So I've got a lot of thoughts on all of this, but I really do appreciate very much the process that's been happening so far, the work that's been put into planning to plan. It is often overlooked, and I think it's very necessary, so I appreciate that approach. And I can say that we've seen the things that are driving this in our community. We've seen our median home value increase, and the values of homes that are above the median increase at a faster rate than the homes at the lower end. It's a regional thing, it's not just us, and so these numbers are real, we've seen them. And folks coming into the office to register their cars, they're getting a little bit older. We're seeing folks coming up here from out of state more than folks moving in from within the state. And the number of kids, as you know, we're seeing it as well, It's just not what it used to be. So I just wanted to say that we've seen these same numbers, these same trends, the same changes. We lost a lot of our state subsidy or revenue sharing, if you want to call it that, a couple of years ago. We were a little bit ahead of you, just a little bit, and it's just continuing to be an impact that we can't ignore. And so I really very much appreciate the effort that's gone into this. I think that the decision to present this as a how and not an if is valuable and important because it's just not something we can ignore anymore. So thank you all, and I'll pass this on to, I guess, Lloyd.
It occurs to me to wonder, did you consider the impact on the children of being spent a long ways away, 2 commutes, and the impact on the parents having to deal with 2 kids, possibly at different schools? It seems to me that there's only been half of the situation really considered. If you look at the school budget, that was a handy dodge of Henry's question, but it might be useful to find out what that is. But more, you just left out an important category of costs that's really important to local officials.
Is there a document that you have that we can show people that states the rationale that you explained for the kindergarten closures so they can understand and appreciate your reasoning?
Yeah, so I sent out yesterday to all the select board, the document that has the links to all of the budget presentations and informed documents that are available. And it's also posted on our website.
Not yet. No, not yet. Do you folks have any other questions? Comments?
I'd be more than happy to invite any of the elementary administrative team. I know, unfortunately, Principal Jacobs was home today, but if Michelle Hood, I think maybe Abby Hartford is online, Jeff Boston, that, you know, these decisions that we made were made collectively, collaboratively, thoughtfully. And yes, you can read the documents online, but maybe that would also help if you could hear some of what they have to say.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a conversation.
I'm just going to add real quick that if Superintendent Smith has sent documents out very specifically on December 3rd, was the presentation, and there's documents for it that walk through the whole early childhood education, the cohort shift, and the sharing of resources. So there's some very good information in there if it seems overwhelming to go and look at, like, where do I start? Like, that one's really specific to talking about some of that really specific information. So if I can help get you to a really specific spot.
Go ahead.
I would just add that after working in a very small school in Mount Vernon for many years as a teacher and educator, everyone says small class sizes is what they're looking for. Everyone wants small class sizes. There is a difference between a small class size that's healthy and runs really well and a class size that's too small. When you start talking about numbers of 2 and 3 students, it's unhealthily small. You can't teach, you can't cover units. If a couple kids are out sick, you're left sitting there with 1 student. I've seen it personally in my own school. It's uncomfortable for the student, it's uncomfortable for the teacher. It's not healthy as far as social growth, emotional growth, educational growth. That's what we're looking at here. So I was fully involved in this plan when looking at, 3 students in Wayne, a very small cohort of students in Mount Vernon. It is healthier for the growth of the student educationally, socially, and emotionally to be in a larger group, in a larger pool of students for all of those reasons and more.
Thank you.
My name's Michelle LaForge. I'm the principal at the high school, so I'm here in solidarity, in part because we were all at the table, all of us. And when Dr. Smith says we spent hours almost daily, weekly, like a lot. And I hope that you will ask some questions about the work that has been done around transportation. There's a lot of good that we have thought through around how to do this thoughtfully for kids to answer other layers. So just keep asking questions, but just know we did this work together.
Karen, do you have an estimate on if we were to maintain the 4 elementary school buildings, what the cost and deferred maintenance would look like over the next 10 years?
That's a great question, and I believe is what will all be, addressed during the strategic planning process. And again, I think there's a budget that we need to pass in the here and now, and we had to make some cuts. We are looking out for the best interest of the students first. We also are ensuring that our staff are feeling supported and that we're communicating with them all along the way. And we are going to start doing the plan to planning, hopefully after this meeting and starting next week. We can start gathering the smaller committee together to do the planning to plan. But that process will include researching and finding a consultant that can work with us and making those decisions so that we can then get ready and start gathering some potential research and costs of things. And so that we can have that information for that process. So I hear what you're saying and absolutely, but we just are trying to get a budget passed now and have a plan ready that we felt good about for next year, and then let the strategic planning process then take on and address all of these things. And we just didn't want to get ahead of ourselves either. Let this process work out. We have individuals, Mr. Harker, already coming with information that can be brought right to that strategic planning process, that committee. So those are all the things, and Mandy's writing it down, and I'm sure she's fully prepared to start looking at the costs of what it is to run each building, and what that looks like. So I hope I satisfied your question. Okay.
I just want to add from a board perspective, there's a budget, like we didn't get into the weeds of it, but if you don't know, there's a budget committee that's been, Mr. Tarbuck's the chair of the budget committee, a number of meetings, working with the administrative team on this budget. There's been a number of meetings on this budget. There's numerous public documents online. I know Karen has spent time, she's met with, I don't want to speak how many some town managers, town officials.
Meetings in place with others.
With meetings in place with others. So there, in this, everything to this point has been voted on and passed by a majority of the board. So, there's been a lot of work and input from all aspects on this budget, and a lot of, probably some of the most information I've ever seen on budgets in my time on the board be put out. I'd say the most, yeah. So I just wanted to add that from a board perspective, like everything we're by a board with a majority of the board voting for it, really a super majority of the board voting for it. So wanted to weigh in. Any other feedback from the select board members who are here tonight? All right, we will move along. I'm actually going to do after this, Andrew. I realized I should do a D. Yeah. So we will move along to citizens' comments related to the budget. I think Mr. Harker. wanted to speak?
Just before my 2 minutes starts, to answer your question, in the financial analysis that I did, that I provided to the board recently, the first year with this kindergarten switchover, it's estimated about 170,000 would be a savings. But again, estimated assumptions and has to be validated by real numbers. Overall, but again, just to give you an idea on how they've got to do a lot of number crunching here to get these sorts of figures, and hopefully they will be able to do it.
All right, Mr. Harker.
Thank you very much.
Welcome.
A suggestion for you tonight, and I left you a one-pager here, because I wanted to show you that I would love to see another reserve fund established of $400,000 to fund tutoring of students. I gave you a one-pager to show you that over the past 4 years, the instruction line has been under budget up to $1.4 million in 4 years. That $1.4 million went into the unassigned balance. It's now been somewhat transferred over to the capital reserve fund. My question is that the question I ask is, what is more important than helping our students and using those funds that were originally intended to assist them directly? So I am suggesting extra funds for students identified and in need, utilize time-tested individual tutoring approach to assist them. And this could be done in school, after school with contracts, and during the summer. And my hope would be that, and I also in that one pager gave you a draft article that you could do. And again, my hope is that you will recognize that there has been a lot of reductions in staffing and teaching, and hopefully that money that was saved in the past 4 years, some of that can go into a reserve. I know a number of students need that kind of help. I think it'd be a little bit innovative, a little bit different. I've talked to a half a dozen teachers, some retired, that think it might be a good idea to look at, because teachers that are here after work might get some additional income. You've got consultants out there that could be doing some extra tutoring, and in the summer, it might be good to use a tutoring approach rather than a formal summer school program. Thank you very much. Oh, I'm sorry, I have one more quick one. The quick one was just to ask about the school resource officer position. In 2023, Sheriff Mason said it'd be $140,000 initially, and then $60,000 each year after that. And somehow we've gotten up to $115,000. The original 140 was to get him a car and some equipment, and then $60,000 for his salary every year. Right now, you're estimating $115,000. I'm just asking, huh? Something's wrong there, and it might be worth looking at the contract with the Sheriff's Office. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Emily Watson?
Hi, my name is Emily Watson. I'm a Wayne parent. Thank you guys for sharing this information. I will say, having been involved a little bit last year in budget proceedings, I very much appreciate the work that you've put in. And there has been increased information availability. I think there's always room, lots of room for improvement on communication and kind of order of how we do that. But I appreciate the steps that you've taken. I wanted to, part of this is a clarifying question and partly a comment. When I was looking through the strategic plan, I noticed, and I hadn't heard mention of it, but I kind of noticed just by digging through, that in a couple of the proposed pathways, and obviously recognizing that this is all very proposed and preliminary, but that when and if consolidation of 1 or 2 schools is complete, the elementary schools will serve only up through 4th grade. And then our 10-year-olds will enter middle school in 5th grade. Am I understanding that correctly?
So we don't have, the models that I presented at the presentation, suggest, options, but we didn't say that specifically.
Okay, it said that in the document that was written that fifth grade would be absorbed into MCMS.
So all of that is up to the strategic planning committee.
Okay.
So, and even what, the options that were presented were just ideas.
Sure.
There's probably many more different options out there that the strategic planning committee needs to vet and work through, and then through public forums and community input, that whole strategic plan and outline is how we would get that input. So I guess getting into strategic planning questions, that might be an option or an idea, but we have to wait for that work to happen.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, it's hard to know when to ask those questions because from the public standpoint, it's hard to know, like, it does feel like once the wheels go on the cart's going, and it's hard to know when to jump in and say, like, hey, this is really uncomfortable for us, which I would say having my 10-year-old in middle school would be very uncomfortable amongst many other things that are outlined as ideas. So I just want to communicate very clearly that your absolute best effort in collaborating with town parents, community members, select boards in any ideas and whittling down of ideas as we move forward is going to be absolutely essential because as we're wondering why parents leave public schools, when parents are dissatisfied with these decisions, this is why. So, or one of the many reasons why. So just please take that into consideration. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have a, come up to the podium? Go ahead, sir.
Okay.
Yep.
One thing that occurs to me, you must have given a great deal of thought to this. It shows your trends in total enrollment, your size of your classes and everything. How have you got any insight at all into how much this is affected by homeschooling versus school schooling? You got a handle on that?
Yeah. So I put that information in one of the documents that I've posted online.
Yep.
And shared with the boards. It's our enrollment document,
All right.
historical enrollment. But to answer your question, homeschooling has increased over the last several years. It spiked really during COVID, and then it dropped, but then it rose back up. So part of the strategic planning will be absolutely to review that data. We also have students that are superintendent agreements that, between Winthrop and other, neighboring school districts. We also have a population of students that attend charter schools or private high schools. So I have that data available, and I will bring it to the strategic planning committee as one source of information and consideration on if that's something that we wish to, explore more through our strategic plan itself.
Any more folks that'd like to comment? Please step up.
I'm Holly Stevenson from Wayne, and I was board member for many, many years and chair up here. And just curious why there were not more community forums to make such a huge decision like this about moving kindergarten.
The budget process is, a time crunch to get through to things, to get through at a certain pace. And, this was something we brought to the board at the last meeting.
At the last meeting?
Yeah, and the board chose to vote on it at that time.
Well, I can only say that I overheard this information on Sunday. And if Wayne as a whole had been involved and known about it, there'd be a lot more people here tonight. And my other question is, in Wayne, we certainly wouldn't have a class of 2 children. We have very effectively had double classes. This year's kindergarten has 11 children. And I'm curious how you came up with 47 for next year, because
Because I took the actual enrollments right now, and then the 3 kindergarten and the 5th grade, class
So
moves
what do
up.
you have for the enrollment now?
So the enrollment right now is 57.
I think it's more than that, but, so there's a
No,
large.
it's not, ma'am, and it will be 47 next year, that would be including the 3 kindergarten students.
Okay, so the 5th grade is, what's the difference there? So I guess I would like you to consider, if you reconsider voting about closing kindergartens, that if there's a class of 2, they might just have a double class, as has been done very effectively, and continue to have open kindergarten where it is not just 1 year of low enrollment, but the next year, just like this year, there's 11 children. So I think it's short-sighted, and it certainly could be put off for a year. I understand this man did some calculations, but it doesn't sound like there's a number that you have for what would be saved.
That decision wasn't made as a cost-saving measure, so we didn't calculate a cost of
Well,
that.
okay, so my point is, if this is about the budget, then you could put it off for a year.
Well, we did cut 2 teachers, and we're in the process of configuring where we are working so that we had some retirements occur in other buildings across the district. We, as an A team, determined which ones needed to absolutely be filled, which ones that we could eliminate through attrition. And then in addition, we had to make 3 additional cuts to our teaching staff to get to a budget that we needed. But also we looked at the enrollments and class sizes. So there was many conversations and data
I
points.
appreciate that.
That were
I
looked
appreciate
at.
that.
And so in part, it is, we eliminated 2 elementary positions, and we're working on making sure that the shuffling around of the teachers, so to speak, is happening right now. So we still have those decisions to make.
Okay, but I think I could still go back to, if it's, I understand you're saying it was not made as a budget decision, but now we're talking budget because you've taken off 2 teachers' salaries from the budget
I mean,
for that.
If you wanted to look at it,
No, I'm just
Yeah.
pointing out that it is a budget consideration when you're saying that you've reduced it by 2 teachers.
We did. We reduced
Yes.
by 2 teachers, and by having the kindergarten consolidate with.
And did you look further out for what is incoming for kindergartens?
Yes, we've been looking at all the numbers, yes.
It's really hard to figure that out. I'm curious how you would do that.
How to look at what we have for current enrollment, and then look at birth rates and all, contacted the state and got the birth rates over the last decade of
So not
births.
actual people. You didn't count actual people that may be coming, students that may be coming.
So what I got was the birth rates from the years back, like 10 years. So the pipeline coming into, if they're still residents of the town, obviously people move in and out, of course. So that was one data point of being able to look at birth rates.
Okay.
In the towns.
Okay, by town from the state.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
can only say that it's extremely disappointing to have such a huge decision like this made without community input. I understand you worked hard, and I understand you took a lot of things into consideration, but a really big thing you didn't take into consideration was input from the community.
Tyler Dunn, Town of Mount Vernon, and I just kind of want to bounce a couple of things. One, I understand there's a lot of challenges around, having these small schools and its impact, but I think at the same time, when we're looking at maintaining 70-year-old buildings with declining enrollment, we have a lot of taxpayers, on fixed incomes that aren't going to be able to absorb, these down the line costs to maintain these buildings and the increasing costs that we're seeing in energy and staffing and continued inflation. So when we're talking about maintaining a building open with less than 50 students next year, it's tough to ask, other towns in the district, because it's not, just one town that we're talking about. It's 4 other towns that all have to share the bill, and it's tough, especially when one town in the district is hitting an over 10% increase this year. So I'd just like to, keep that in mind, that it's not just one town that's facing the costs and challenges, it's all of our towns. And for some of us, this budget is going to be a tough sell because of how big of an increase it is on property taxes. And the cost per student is just going up and up and up.
Thank you. Yep, you can step, go ahead.
This is a quick question. How and when is the strategic planning committee going to be formed?
So we have the Plan to Plan committee that we will be forming and working on starting next week. And that Planning to Plan is a small committee, and again, it's looking at our process and determining, researching outside consultant that we could hire and looking at that. And then once we determine, hopefully by June, going into July, go to full committee of a committee of 12, 18 people that have representatives from all the communities to be the actual committee, and then start that work. So I have all of that was in the presentation last week, and I have documents that also are posted in them online that are right under our budget docs. Diane made sure right this morning everything's up to date right on that right on the front homepage of the website where it says budget docs.
All right. I just think it's important that community be involved in these decisions as you go forward.
And beyond the committee, there would still be focus groups set up in each town to get feedback, surveys, to get the community input. Absolutely.
You can step right up and identify yourself and which town, please.
My name's TJ Dagno. I'm from Wayne, Maine. I just want to get some clarity or ask the question of why you're not combining classes. My daughter went to Wayne. She had Mrs. Stiniford for, I think, 3 or 4 years in a row, and it worked out great. I think she had, what, two kids in her class, I think? Because it's tough, because, we're a community, we're a tight-knit community, and the kids are from Wayne, but they're going to go to Reedfield. It doesn't make any sense to me how that, I know you said it's not the cost, but to me, in my head, that's going to cost a lot more money than combining the first and second grade.
So we did,
which has been done.
Yeah, so the administrative team discussed that, and in the past, when it was suggested to do that at Wayne in the recent past, it wasn't very well received.
And so.
By whom?
And so we were informed by the Principal Jacobs, who attends the advisory committees, I guess, that that would never fly in Wayne, no one would want.
It's flown in Wayne.
In the past, correct? But
Yeah.
at some point, it came to, no, you can't consolidate, like, even like last year, can't combine grade levels. Like, that was a big thing that was discussed and was like an
Okay.
absolute, you can't do that.
You can't do that. Okay.
That was.
Why?
And it was actually asked of this board to add those positions back. I actually been on the board since that's been asked, and that's 100% correct. It was actually said by parents, they didn't want combined classes last year. I was a part of those discussions. We're not going to debate, this isn't an open forum, so you can proceed.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Lacey Cornell. I have 2 little kids in Wayne, in Reedfield right now. I have a daughter in kindergarten. I have a son in pre-K. I was very excited for him to go to Wayne so that they could be together for kindergarten. But now I deal with the very tough choice of what kid do I put on the bus? What kid do I bring to school? Because neither of them like the bus. Neither of them are big enough to even step on the steps. And my daughter, who's in kindergarten, I can drop her off. My son will also have to be dropped off at the same exact time over in Reedfield. Then I'll have to pick up my son over in Reedfield, and then I'll have to drive another 20 minutes to Wayne to pick up my daughter. But that will be past the time of 3 o'clock where they can hold her. They can hold her until 3 o'clock, and then she can get on the bus to go to the Lab Rec Center, where a bunch of teenagers run the program. I'm not comfortable with that. I'm also not comfortable with either of my children taking a bus, especially my little boy, who's going to be in kindergarten in Reedfield, where the Wayne children have to be on the bus with teenagers. My little boy, who's 5, not even the normal size of a 5-year-old, is going to be with high schoolers. I just would like to know if there are any transportation changes that could be fixed there.
So, I mean, I believe that could also be part of the strategic planning discussion if there's around transportation. I think that is something that would be worth reviewing. So I definitely hear you there.
Okay.
Yeah.
It is concerning. I don't feel comfortable putting my 5-year-old on the bus with a 16-year-old who might not be happy. I don't know. I don't feel comfortable putting them in that position, period. So for me to make that decision of who to put on the bus and who's going to stay safe, it's not okay with me. I bought my house in Wayne when my kids were being born because I loved that tiny little school with the beautiful little village so that they could have one teacher per grade, stay with their friends, know everybody's name so they wouldn't have to be scared. It just seemed like the most perfect little school, and now it's being split up. And if it can't be reversed, if it can't be fixed, then I just would suggest doing it faster because I can't split myself in 2. I can't pick my daughter and son up at the same time. I can't drop them off at the same time. The buildings are 20 minutes apart. I just feel it's an uncomfortable change, and I really, really would have loved to be informed. I know you said you decided last week. Maybe it would have been an option last week. Let the community know, a vote the next week. Something of that sort that was more informative and inclusive. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Forrest Cornell. I'm a Wayne resident and have 2 children in the school system. I've heard a lot of discussion that there was collaboration and a lot of discussion about this change and that it's best for the students, that the students are in mind, right? And I think everyone agrees that we want, we have our students' best interests in mind. But it's not collaboration when the parents and the students aren't informed of it. They're not taken into that consideration. They're not given any of the input. A change that's going to affect the children and the family should involve the children and the family with those decisions, not coming from somewhere else. It should be a true collaborative effort, not just within the board, but involving the community.
Thank you.
So I just want to state thank you, but I do want to state that the current pre-K students already attending Reed Field are the three they're the same three. So they're already in Reed Field right now for pre-K. Right, it's not, right. But right.
Go ahead, Mr. Keegan.
Just a couple of quick questions for the board, and I'm going to ask you to raise your hand. Is it, if correct, how many of you were voted by your community to be on this board? Yeah, so you serve your community by taking their points and bringing it forward. How many are up for re-election this year? So I saw a Mount Vernon, a Wayne, a Manchester, and a Reed Field. So if you're not running, thank you for your service. If you are running, good luck. But I hope everybody think about this in terms of their input and how they get the input and how they communicate with the board, because it's vitally important. Mr. Roderick knows I've called him. Mr. Tarbuck knows I call him. Pat has heard me call her, because it's important to, as a parent, to make sure that we have opportunities outside of debate during these meetings to get the back and forth. So just remember that, everybody.
Thank you.
I just have one clarifying question.
Yeah.
We keep quoting that there's 3 kids in kindergarten next year. How many Wayne children were in pre-K in Reed Field last year? I'm quite sure it was 3. 7?
14.
14 Wayne kids in pre-K in Reed Field?
Oh, I don't know.
I'm
Are you
quite
saying this year or this current?
last school year in pre-K in Reed Field for Wayne. I'm quite sure it was 3 children.
It was either 3 or 4.
And there's 11 in kindergarten this year. So quoting the pre-K numbers that are not required, and many people don't do, as you discussed last week, it's a half day, it's not convenient, is misleading, and I don't think it should be used as a quotable number in your assessments.
What I was referring to is the current, the current pre-K students that are currently at Reed Field are the 3 that are transitioning to kindergarten.
Yes.
And the point being is, we don't have any other students entering kindergarten like we normally do, because of that exact reason that you're saying, is that not all families choose to have their child participate in pre-K. And for various reasons, one, because we have a half-day program, which something we can talk about in the strategic plan to go full day. And so usually we have more that come to that end up coming to kindergarten. And currently in Wayne, the numbers are still at 3.
Yes, and what I'm saying is in pre-K last year, there were 3 kids. In kindergarten this year, there are 11. So using that pre-K number is misleading and uninformed.
Yeah, you can step up. It's gone.
I'm Angie Dagnew from Wayne. I'm a parent and also I'm a staff in the district. I do want to say thank you to Karen. As a staff, you've been very good at communicating to us through email. That's how I found out about this plan. As a parent, not so much. I think maybe we could take and learn from this moment about how you can be more transparent and be able to communicate to the community and the families more like you do with the staff. We're equal. We all love our children, whether they're our own or our students. I just think that what has happened here could have been done a little bit better with communication to parents in the community, to have their input and to feel part of this. Because I think, change is hard for everybody. And I think being a part of it, to be able to communicate our concerns, just voicing our opinions or just our feelings, I think might help make people feel a bit more at ease with change. So that would be my only request, is maybe moving forward, we could do a little bit better with communicating with the public.
I'll be brief. I just wanted to speak to your suggestion. So I was one of the parents that was, had my feathers in a ruffle last year when we talked about combining classes. But that was a very specific situation with two very specific classes. It was not a ubiquitous statement of like, we should never combine classes here at the school. It was that these two grade levels would not benefit from that particular combination, and that consideration needed to be made. So that was my understanding of the conversation. And I think that it would be important anytime, community members are responding to something that's important to remember and carry forward, but also kind of carry that context with it as well.
I think Taylor was asking, and I didn't quite understand from the answer, I think he was asking, how did you come to your conclusion as to the projected kindergarten class size in Wayne for next year? And if it was based on this year's pre-K enrollment in Reedfield, he was asking, over time, has that proved to have been an accurate indicator of the enrollment in kindergarten?
So we always have a smaller cohort of students that enter pre-K because it's a half-day program, or families choose not to send their kid to school, or there's a local provider. There's many reasons. So we always have fewer students that are attending pre-K. And so when we start doing our pre-K and K screening, which we've already begun, we are working with the school administrative assistants. We're doing all that we can with Child Find and reaching out to the community to get all of our lists for the school year. And so, so again, at every school, we typically have more students register for kindergarten. So we might, the previous year cohort, we had like 32, 33 students in the pre-K, and then we ended up this year, our first grade class has 49, the smallest class we've ever had. And since back 2002, 2003, as far back as I went. And so this year, again, we're looking at our numbers. Right now, for pre-K, we have 18 that have registered for the screening at Manchester. We have 21 at Reedfield. We have at Mount Vernon, we're maybe up to 7 or 8 maybe at Mount Vernon, and we have maybe 4 or 5 at Wayne. The current kindergarten list, because we also are capturing those students that are not in our pre-K right now, that are planning on attending our kindergarten programs. And right now, there's still only 3 on the list for Wayne that from the current that are attending pre-K at Reedfield right now. And what we're looking at for numbers so far for the fall next year is the same numbers that we are experiencing right now with our pre-K and K if we look across our district. So we currently have 49 kindergartens, 48 or 49 kindergarten students, and that's where we're at right now for the fall.
Do you have a follow-up question? Okay. I'll entertain.
To make this short, it seems to me as I think about this, which I've learned a lot from this discussion, you have actually foreclosed your strategic plan by the decisions that you already made. You've already assumed away one of the most important questions in the whole process. And you could do that, but you've got to tell everybody that this is what you've done.
Mr. Boston? You can proceed.
Jeff Boston, principal at Reedfield Elementary School, also former Wayne principal. I've been an educator for 33 years. I've been an administrator for 25. It's hard to sit over there and hear because the budget, we're in a perfect storm right now. And I know the school board knows that with declining enrollments, aging buildings that we talked about, and the state not providing the funding that it needs. With that being said, the superintendent sat us all down, gave us that news, and then said, how do we make this better for our students? In the discussion, I know has been a lot on Wayne, and I can understand that, but this is an RSU 38 budget. It's all 4 communities. And I don't like the fact that when people point out and say, she, it is a we decision. The superintendent has involved us from the get-go. The superintendent, I've been in 4 different districts as an administrator. This has been the clearest and transparent budget I've been part of in all my 33 years. It is our civic duty as community members to come to these meetings, to express concerns that we have early on. And I know some people are saying I'm just getting the information. But at the same time, it's important that people reach out. She puts things online. It's available. We televise these meetings. And it's important to reach out to your board members to ask questions so you can get the answers you need. I want to just say I've been here for 13 years. I'm really happy I'm part of Marinacook School Department and school system. This board and the superintendent have done a fantastic job of being as transparent as possible. So, thank you.
Ma'am, I think you had a comment. If you want to come up, please.
Hi, I'm Teresa Kirchner. I live in Wayne. I've been on the local school advisory board, I think, ever since they were formed, which somebody might be able to do that math and tell me. It's probably been 15 years. And I think our role on these local school advisory board committees has been to respond to the parents, support the teachers and the principal, and we've tried to do that in Wayne. And I guess I just have to say that I really am disappointed that we didn't know anything about this as members of the committee. The district set up these committees. I met with the superintendent years ago when they were formed, and they gave us a specific responsibility. And I think it would have been much better if we had heard as members of this committee about this decision. So I'll just leave it at that. Thank you for your good work, and I know you're thinking about our children. I just think the process of informing our communities was flawed.
Thank you.
I just want to clarify, David Twitchell, a board member, is part of that committee, correct? Our board member, David Twitchell, is a member of that committee.
Right, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And I think David, we've talked about this a little bit. I think David wasn't quite aware himself that this decision was being made for this school year. I think we all thought it was for the next school year. And I think it's important to put this information in town newsletters. We all have town newsletters, and to get the information in the paper. I know how hard you all have worked, but the community input, I think, is key to this process. So maybe we would have we would have had a different opinion in the town of Wayne than the opinions you had. I have to say that all the years I've been on this local school advisory board, I never heard parents, except for the discussion that Emily said tonight, be vocal about combining grade levels. And I have been on that committee for quite a long time.
We were actually asked in one of the budget negotiations, I've been on the board since 2014, we were actually asked, I'll go back and find the minutes, to not have combined classes at Wayne. It was actually part of a budget meeting where parents came and asked for that not to happen.
But is that, I mean, was that discussion part of this recent process? If you had gone,
No.
if you'd gone to Wayne and said, your options are to combine grades or to move the
But
kindergarten?
it's what about what's best for the students and for RSU 38 students, so.
And I understand that. I understand that
So-
you're looking at the whole district, and that I also understand that you're looking at the tax burden for communities. I just really think it was a misstep not to have something in our town newsletters that informed people that this decision was going to happen for next year.
Thank you. Teresa, I just wanted to also say, I mean, that part of the conversation with the principals too was with, implementing the curriculum that we have for the grade levels, the literacy, the math, that, it is challenging for a teacher to have that, two different curriculums, and trying to implement it at the appropriate levels with the combined classes.
Yeah,
And that was also expressed. So there's, that is coming from teachers,
Yeah, and I can understand that. I volunteer in the
Yeah.
school, so I see that process. But I just really, I work for a nonprofit, and we spend a lot of time communicating with our towns. And I just think that there was a misstep here, as people have said, in terms of what we knew in our communities and what we didn't know.
All right, thank you. Yeah, proceed. I'm being very flexible tonight. I
Well,
wanna
thank
let
you.
folks
I
know in
appreciate that.
public
I'm
comment,
just
so.
thinking, this is
flexible.
3 kids we're talking about. That means probably 6 parents at the most. Have they been talked with before now? And is there any chance, even if this, this budget passes and it says that the Wayne kindergarten goes up, is there room for a different decision to be made? For example, the parents and teachers and the principal agree that, yeah, maybe it would work okay for 3 kids to combine with the first grade. Or maybe 2 of the kids want to go to, or the parents are fine with their kids going to Manchester or Reedfield, and one parent says, like this one parent who's just saying how difficult it's going to be for her to have a pre-K and a K in 2 different schools. Is there any room for negotiation, I guess is what I'm asking.
Yeah, parents can always make, requests about like internal transfers if that's where you're going. I believe that, part of also looking at teacher caseloads as well. And so, it does, have a little bit of a morale, if you will, kind of component when, there are such varying, discrepancies in class sizes across the district, depending on which school you're in and what grade you teach. And so like all of those variables, it can create these inequities that are unintended, but are happening in our current structures. And so I think having those conversations and having that be a part of, and if you're talking more long-term stuff, that's the strategic plan. If you're talking about the immediate for next year, like there's still stuff in the works. Like we can have a general, framework of what we want to do to ensure that we are meeting, students and needs and that we can, foster their growth and their development. But we also have other decisions that we have to also consider, like looking at caseloads for school counselors, for example, or our nursing staff. The needs shift, and we have to use our MTSS process, which is called multi-tiered systems of support. Each building principal has a team in their building that we review and look at student data, we look at numbers, we look at needs, we look at all of those things to make informed decisions. So I think where you're getting at is, do we have a system and a structure in place to look at how to best meet students' needs? And we do.
Those 3 students that we're talking about. That's what I'm asking about, is just
Right.
because
And-
it's written down that the Wayne kids will go to another school. Is there any, I mean, is that not negotiable as of right now?
board-
I guess that's what I'm asking. Well, I guess it depends on if
a
the
board
communities vote for the budget. But it was in the budget, right?
Right, that's right. The board makes the decision on the staffing positions that are available, and then the administrative team makes the decisions on where those staff.
Because if you did combine 3 kids into, I don't know how big the current first grade is, and I understand it's more difficult for the teacher and all that, but if you did do that, it wouldn't affect staffing. You'd still just need that one teacher. So I'll be quiet.
All right, we are going to move on to, yep. Yeah, we're gonna move on to deliberations. Now it's the board's time to talk. Yep. Yeah, now we're gonna move on to deliberations, and we can do yours after, because part of deliberations. Yeah. You can make motions.
Of what everybody was saying here, and one of the big things that everybody said was communication. There is a subcommittee for communication that the school board has. There is a lot of information that is being compiled in these things and being pushed out in the current way it's being done.
From your toes, Chip.
Is this better?
That's-
Okay,
yeah.
all right. It's being pushed out in the current ways that it is. If you don't, if that isn't working for you, or you don't know where to find that, you can email the superintendent, the chair, and say, I would like to know when the next meeting is, because I have some ideas on better communication, or it would be better if you communicated this way. I will tell you that I sat on your side not too long ago, when the last big upheaval was going on with the superintendent here. But it motivated me to get involved too. And I said it then, and I'll say it again, nothing brings out a good crowd like a good controversy. And this brought out a good crowd tonight, but that's what I'm saying. If you're saying the communication is poor, communicate with the communication board and say, this is how it would be better to get these informed decisions out. I heard a nice statement about, a newsletter. Those newsletters have deadlines, and these board meetings have deadlines too. And I don't know if that is a possibility to get that information out that way. I think, unfortunately, we're in the electronic era, and I think that's probably one of the best ways to communicate. But if simple emails or being told you have to go to this website to look to see what's coming up in the future minutes for that isn't working for you, I think that's a good possibility to contact the communication board and go, hey, a Facebook or an Instagram or something that just alerts us there's new information out, and go look for it.
Yeah, Leslie, go ahead.
Just to be able to tackle Chip, but not be redundant, was those similar things. I wrote down a ton of notes as well. And the very first thing I just want to say is how respectful everybody has been inside this room tonight. And I know just how frustrated and when you don't know what to do as a parent and you just have lots of feelings. And one did a really good job not letting them leak out at that microphone earlier, because I could see it and I'm like, I'm with her too. What Chip is saying specifically first is I've been, even as a non-board member, at the communication committee meetings, and then I chose to take different paths of committee involvement once I got here. And there's so many avenues explored on how do we get this to our community, how do we share information effectively, and there are so many channels that it's hard to figure out what is the most effective way to reach the most people, to get as far as possible. Some of it includes our local town offices and what do they have and what do they push, and we use Facebook and we use all these others. And it's somewhat of an impossibility, but I still second what Chip has said. If you have other ideas and you know your town better and think there's other better ways that might not be the same for all the towns, that's okay. Definitely step forward and say something. But what we do know is that every single year, a budget schedule still gets published back in the fall, and that we will hit this cycle every single year. And I think that if we can really early, and what I'm hearing is some parents with very young children that are coming too. So this is the beginning. I wasn't even in it as soon as some of you are in it, right? I am a Mount Vernon resident. My children went to Reedfield initially, and that was also because that's where pre-K was. My twins didn't go to pre-K in the district because they were at an early Head Start that also offered things. So everybody's story is just a little bit different, and there's all the reasons. And the reasons around this difficult thing that was laid out around the kids in the different schools were eventually gonna be there at some point anyway, but I get just how little. But it sounds like something that Jason and his transportation group might be able to solve as a part of like, what's the root cause of how you feel, and that we solve the right thing instead of believing that what exists would continue to exist if we don't look at the very specifics. And I think that to everybody's point, that when we look at what has happened in the past, and we let it only govern the discussions and the exploration of our current and of our future, then we do miss out on a great opportunity, but we also miss out if we don't bring it with us and believe we have something for an experience to try to draw from. I do think we missed the boat with talking to some of the parents here, or talking to parents here. But at the same time, we can't, and it does matter when you do get to the specifics of staff or kids or class or the numbers, like it can be different. Like two groups might go well together while two groups might not. I think that's what was brought up, like when you get to the very micro level of it. I don't know as though we can always pivot that quickly, because timing is what is super, super critical. And what's in front of us is a one-year plan to try and get us to the next years and engage everybody as we continue to move forward. We simply have to do that. And what I would also say is, like, it's not the first conversation about trying to figure out what to do when we do have two heavy schools and we have two very light schools. This isn't the first year it's being talked about. Like, it just keeps getting talked about as we continue to try to figure out what the right solution is, when it's not gonna be feasible, like, and we've still taken a very light approach to try and just get us through the next year. And I know that doesn't mean anything if it's your child, and it's, even if it's your first, like, it doesn't carry enough weight, but it is the truth if you can zoom out a little and be like, we've done the very best that we can to figure out how to get us through what is very difficult in the next 1 year, to include everybody in how we go forward after that. But every committee meeting is a public meeting. Almost every committee meeting is a public meeting that can be attended by the public. And these, like I said, are up there. Go back and watch some. I definitely think we have some better ideas on how to push some things in our existing system of communication to call them out a little bit different, or maybe with, I know we hate headlines because that's sometimes part of the problem, but if we can help just sort of call out what's in there so that folks will go and gravitate to things that are really important to them. I think we have ways that we can do that, and I do appreciate everybody that's come. And I know that's more than just a comment, but it matters. It matters to me you all came to.
Thanks, Leslie. I see Mr. Twitchell.
Thank you. First, I want to apologize to parents and community Wayne, because I am on that committee, and I am on that committee and have tried to be sharing things, and the kindergarten being moved this coming year was something that I had totally missed, and so that was my fault. It would have come out other aspects like the principal and so forth. I think I was sharing with people and explaining our rationale as a board and a district, and why I had approved of it. The principal thing was my oversight, not the principal thing, the 5th grade change was my oversight, and it wasn't the superintendent's fault because I had that information. And that's all for now, but there'll be more later.
All right, thanks. Kristen, go ahead.
So it's funny because earlier this week I had a conversation with another one of the board members, and I am the chair of the communications committee, so I will own that. But we actually talked about, I was going to email Karen, and this is not made up, that we need to have a communications committee meeting earlier than what is set. Unfortunately, we had to move the last meeting. We've only had one meeting. We've had to prioritize the budget, unfortunately, so we did have to move the last communications committee meeting. So like I said, we've had one, and I think you guys could probably agree that what we wanted to communicate then is very different than what we should be communicating now. So I will say it on the record. Could we please move the communications meeting earlier to listen to everybody and be proactive? And I guess that's it.
Thank you, Kristen, in adding that. And I do want to say that part of, trying to make sense of the strategic planning committee and the planning to plan, the strategic plan, is that my thought, it was to kind of include that as part of, like, the communications committee is almost like a vision committee. And shifting that communications committee to a vision committee that's working as part of that strategic planning. I got this idea, I didn't make it up. I've been to superintendent workshops, and it's a model that's out in other districts, and they call it, I'm like, oh, that's our communication committee. And so it's like a visioning committee, and it makes sense going into the strategic planning process that committee would be represented on that. And then moving forward, what that would look like is that once the strategic plan is in place, then that committee is kind of like that oversight committee to ensure that we are implementing the plan that we had developed and intended to move forward. So that's just some ideas to come. And so absolutely, I think moving forward and also looking at next year, I have a lot of ideas about that.
And I just have one more comment, if it's allowed.
Yeah, proceed.
Karen has done a phenomenal job making up for what she basically has been, the communication committee. So thank you for doing all that you've done. It is not unnoticed.
Well, the communication committee isn't responsible for all communication. Let's just be clear, like, the communication that comes from the district doesn't come from the communication committee. It might be, parts of it might come, but more so the strategy or timing or channels or new exploration of more effective ways or better timing maybe is what channels out of that group and may assist superintendent or administration with some communication, but they are not the communication vehicle for the district.
Thank you for clearing that, yes.
I just want to add one other communication comment, if I could.
No.
Okay.
It's the board's time to discuss. You can, thank you, Pat.
I was just
Go
going
ahead,
to
please.
say that this happened so fast, or I thought it did, that there wasn't a lot of time to get out too much information to people. When the budget committee proposed it, and it was within what we needed as far as percentages, and I think you're doing a great job.
Andrew, go ahead.
Thank you. I just wanted to make a distinction around communication in terms of, can you hear me? I know I've got a lot of feedback. Thank you. I think it is important both to acknowledge what the board has done really well in terms of communication with, and also when we don't do as well. And I think the frustration that I have heard from the speakers tonight needs to be, we need to be precise about it. So what I've heard people expressing frustration about was the decision to move the kindergarten, not with the overall budget process. And as Karen highlighted, these are separate. I personally think we've done a very good job with our communications around the budget. I think the communications committee has done well. To me, what has frustrated people about the kindergarten decision was not the communication, but essentially the speak of it, in that the board learned of it on the same night that it was voted on, and so there was no time to communicate it. I know lots of people have learned about it since that meeting, but I think it was less a communications issue and more the fact that the proposal was made on the same night that it was voted on. And so there was really no space for communication. And so, well, I'm sure we can work on our communication. I think we've actually done fairly well with the budget, but that may not be the issue that people are frustrated with here.
I appreciate that, Andrew, and I just want to also be mindful that the administrative team and myself, you know, and as Pat had alluded and others, like, this is a fast process. You start the budget process and we thought, oh, we're doing well, and then we got the ED 279. And that, no district wants to learn that they actually have less state funding from the year prior. 80% of your school budget is personnel and benefit costs. That's 80% of your budget. And when you don't have much places to cut, you know you're going to have to go after positions. And that is not a fun place to be. And, you know, that was a gut punch for the whole A team. And, you know, once we, you know, acknowledge this is where we're at, we had to start moving quickly. And we had to be mindful of our staff. And you know, that was a priority. And to be ahead of making sure we were communicating with our staff, who are so dedicated and valued employees of our district and care about all of our children, and to be ahead of that and be mindful and sensitive to them. And so there's a piece there that was our priority, is to making sure that our staff was going to be okay. And if we were getting ahead of ourselves and our own staff, our own employees were not getting that information first and not able to process it, that would not have felt good either. And I just want that to be well stated and emphasized, that we were considering our staff in this fast cycle moving forward. And that was a priority for us.
Can I say one more thing?
Anyone else that hasn't spoke wanna, no, I always want to give everyone a chance. All right, Leslie, you can go ahead.
I just want to say, to back up, because I meant to say it a minute ago, when folks are saying, like, is this budget, or is this about staff, or is this about kids, or is this about whatever, it all matters all at the exact same time, always. But a good budget or good results come out of a good and thorough plan. It's the outcome. It's not, this year feels considerably different, that when knowing that the byproduct of the work was going to mean some reduction in staff or some shift in staff, the approach was different to figure out what out of that made sense while preserving the children and their quality of education and the staff that are on board also. So the work was done, and I think they've said it a couple times, but I don't know if it landed the whole way, is that they sat and thought about, what do we need to do to be a bit more drastic than we've maybe thought in the past to make this the best situation we can in this 1 year period? How do we do that for kids? And they started to do that, and at the end it was, okay, well, that means we do not need, that means we would need, this would get supported by that, and we don't have that now. Like, that was the outcome of the work. The outcome of the work was what positions don't necessarily need to go forward. It wasn't, let's take this and then figure out how to make a plan. And that feels like quite a dramatic shift that was run all the way through this effort so far, that is different than it has always felt in the past.
Thank you.
Can I get one more thing?
Yeah, absolutely, Mr. Jones.
And I think this is a, I think, I forget who said it, but it's a perfect storm happening right now. Because yes, we have rising costs, we have lower population of students coming through, we're graduating more than we're bringing in. The EPS funding in the ED 279 has changed a little bit, but in the presentation, was it 44 kids from last year to this year is the difference? that equates in funding around $500,000 lost, not by state calculations, by just per student calculations. So the state kicks in a certain amount per pupil. If you lose 44 pupils, you lose 44 kick-ins too. So I think that what we're doing here right now is tough, it's uncomfortable, but I also think that it's necessary because sooner or later, it's gonna become a very bad reality that we have to face. We're gonna have to make rash decisions, and I think the way that this has been laid out in front of me, I feel a lot more comfortable about going forward and finding someone to help us navigate through this process and not let emotions dictate decision-making. We're gonna let the education of our students and the data that's pulled out of it dictate that. And unfortunately, our district is big. You know, if we look at travel distance, if we go from one end to the other, it's big, and that's what really makes it uncomfortable, is that it's not like these other school districts that maybe they only have 2 or 3 towns, and they're this nice little convenient circle that everybody can travel in and out. So moving kids from one school to another is an extra 10 minutes on the bus, and we're done. It's not that. So I do thank, you know, Karen and the A-team especially, to start this forward-thinking process and let's getting this ball rolling, because when you look at the data that has been put out, the population chart for students it's a steady decline, and it's not stopping. There's no blips in the radar where it pops up and then goes back down again. So this is I think we're taking a bad situation and trying to make the best effort to put a plan forward that may not fit everybody, but it's hopefully going to fit a majority of people.
And just to add to what you said, Chip, we're trying to be proactive in planning. Some of the schools, I was reading in the Press Herald this morning, 80 teachers and staff were being cut. That's wow.
Yeah, we're not the only ones.
Yeah, no. So I just wanted to add, from comments, a few things that it is a proactive approach. I mean, you see school districts, I said it last meeting, I'm gonna say it again this meeting, you see school districts in Presque Isle overnight just closing schools completely because they have no choice. Budgets failing multiple times. There were school district not far from us. They had 4 budget votes, and they were going into the school year not knowing if they had a budget, not knowing if they had enough teachers for the students. They were starting with substitutes. It's a very proactive approach. I mean, there was some comments thrown out that I want to address some comments about deceiving numbers and stuff. A lot of these numbers, these numbers that staff put out were well-researched. When it comes to the data of the students, they checked with local childcare programs, these things. So no one's deceiving or trying to deceive anybody with these numbers. These folks are working extremely hard. No one is trying to do that. And everyone's doing the best research they can here. There could be a family, my sister-in-law has 5 kids under 10 years old. If she wanted to move to one of these, there would be 5 kids overnight under the age of, they're under 9. Yeah, under 9 years old moving to our district. That would be a big increase. These numbers can change, but no one is trying to, the research on the size of the kindergarten, that research was done checking with local child care providers and stuff. Could it change by a couple? Of course it can. This is ebbs and flows. We get data every month or every board packet of how many students, and those numbers change throughout the school year. People move and come and go. And the second part I want to add is the budget numbers for the future years aren't looking any better. This is just part of the storm. There's a bill before the legislature that's probably going to pass. If I had to bet on it, I was there today for other things that I work on. And our district loses in any scenario. Southern Maine, they're increasing. They have more votes. It's how it works. The days aren't getting better for us, low student enrollment rate and high evaluations. It's pretty simple, and we lose, and even with those new bills for EDU 279s, it's not looking good for RSU 38. So, I mean, proactive thinking is absolutely the way to go. When it comes to communication, there's a lot of stuff that gets communicated to a lot of different people. And there's, you know, the boardroom's packed tonight, and I wish the boardroom was this packed every board meeting. There's a lot of lonely nights in this room. There's a lot of information online for people. Everybody has a responsibility and a part to play, in my opinion. So I want to thank everyone. I have respect for everyone on this board, everyone in the community. There's not a call I don't take or an email I don't respond to. I have a lot of respect for the work that's been done. I really appreciate it. I have respect for all the staff that have put tons of time, weekends and nights into this, and I'm very appreciative of this work. So thank you. Andrew, I think you
Made it to my item?
Yeah, it's part of deliberations, so. At any time, yeah, before you go, anytime there can be votes on anything. This is a very fast-moving process. This isn't a new process. There's been nights where a board member's decided they wanted to eliminate a position, or there's been nights where people want to add stuff, and that's why it's a budget process. So it's not anything new how fast this process is moving.
Can I just add one thing?
Yeah.
So as for the Wayne School Advisory Committee, I just learned about it. There's no presence on the Wayne website that it exists. I'm not aware that any other town is active in their advisory. And so I will make sure you're on the listservs now that I know who you are. And I would love to be invited to one of your meetings, and so that we can have a two-way communication. But I will be honest, I just learned that you existed. So that I apologize for not communicating with you, but I didn't know you existed.
I'll just say quickly, there is something on the RSU website, because at the beginning of our meetings this year, I copied it exactly from the RSU website. And I can understand that you might not know about it, because each town did have one of these committees when we went through the redistricting. And I think Wayne is one of the towns that really kept ours quite active, and we have met every year. We tried to meet all through COVID, even online with Jeanette. So I understand that you're new and you probably didn't know about it, but there is, if you go to the RSU website and I forget what it is, but I copied the language for our first.
So you have your meeting dates and your names and information?
No, but I did used to get all the school board packet and agendas from, I think it was from Donna, the former secretary. I got, up till this year, I got all the packets for all the meetings. So I was on the district list with all of you. And the only thing I was going to add about newsletters is I know Jeanette does a great job with our school newsletter, and I read it online. That would be my suggestion for where this information could be presented to the parents. They get a weekly newsletter that's full of all kinds of great activities to do with their kids and things that happen at the school. I just think that's the vehicle that we have in Wayne that I know of for a weekly communication. So that's all I was going to say earlier. I'm sorry I interrupted your process.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and same as school board chair, I've never been invited. I didn't know, I couldn't tell you who the members are, and I'm very open, go to many meetings, so I'd love to be invited as well. Andrew?
Thank you. Okay, so I just want to be clear that my item here concerns the kindergarten removal from Wayne and Mount Vernon, not the budget process. And the distinction, as we've noted, is that the kindergarten removal was part of the strategic planning process, not part of the budget planning process. So I want to share with the board that over the past week, I've gotten feedback from every parent I have met in Wayne that they were both deeply disappointed by the decision and also by the process. Sort of as I highlighted, I don't think that was a communications issue. I think it was simply the fact that it was proposed and voted on in the same meeting, which is not usual for us, is my understanding. and rare for public-facing proposals in general on boards. There's obviously a lot to talk about around there. I won't rehash, but there's issues of the uncertain pipeline. Kindergarten enrollment is still happening, so we don't know exactly how many students will be in the kindergarten class. Combining classes, whether that's a good idea or not. All the parents I know, who most of them are parents of young children, think it's a good idea, or at least a better idea than closing the school. Teachers may disagree, but sort of the point there would be that there are diverse views, and the parents would like to be included in that discussion. And I think the administration did a really good job of including teachers and principals in the discussion. And I think where we tripped up was including parents and community members, because it impacts the community as well as the parents. And so that's what I heard from parents, was both that this was going to be a significant hardship for them, and that they wanted to be included in the decision-making process for decisions of this magnitude. And because we're going into strategic planning, we're asking communities to go through this long, difficult process of deciding between 4 outcomes, none of which will make everybody happy. The key foundation of that strategic planning process is community trust. We have to have community trust for that to work. And the 2 things that we need to have community trust are for people to, 1, believe that the decision has not already been made, and 2, they have to believe that their feedback will have influence over the decision that is made. And so I propose that we need to rescind our decision to remove kindergarten from Wayne and Mount Vernon, because it communicates 2 things. It communicates, 1, that we have already started down the path towards one of the 4 options proposed by strategic planning. It communicates that the decision has already been made. And 2, given the feedback we've heard here tonight, for us to continue in that decision would be to communicate that feedback from parents is not being taken into account. So, and further, I think even beyond the strategic planning process, I think it's essential that we do that to preserve the town's trust that we are listening to them, and so that we don't drive people to more drastic actions, such as considering withdrawing from the district. And so I would like to make a motion that we reverse our decision last week to remove kindergarten from Wayne and Mount Vernon, pending completion of the strategic planning process, when we make a final decision on our path forward for the 4 schools.
Second.
All right. We have a motion and a second. Discussion? Noah, go ahead.
I just want to say that I've taken like everybody else, I've taken a lot of notes tonight and obviously listened to everybody. But my decision tonight is based off the A-team and hearing directly from the principals who are with these kids every day. And that is why I will not vote for this motion.
Thank you, Noah. Mr. Holman?
I recognize and really appreciate what Noah just said. Having watched this over the years, I think that the input and research and the sense of collaboration of A-team and Karen is the best I've seen in this district. And I really appreciate that. Hearing Michelle, Pat, and others speaking as a teacher, I voted to support this last week because really understanding and having experience myself and my kids in some very small classes coming up through Mount Vernon, where the numbers were not developmentally ideal for them. The group numbers weren't right, or only a boy, or only 1 girl in a classroom. It was really problematic. I voted to support it last week for the aspect of what's best developmentally for kids. I do recognize, looking at it can vary. It's really hard to peg year to year. I just want to recognize that. It's also really clear to me that although Karen's right, getting word and communicating with employees who can hear things and it can go bad fast. It's really incredibly high priority, and I respect that. But we missed the boat in some ways in terms of opening up the lines of communication to parents, and really opening up so we can really hear and putting out like a two-way thing. I think there's a lot of room for improvement on that. I do hope the communications committee can do something, meet sooner than later, and recognize that there's stuff they can be doing in the short term versus the long strategic vision, which I think is an excellent thought. And I'm eager to hear what you have. I would like clarification. I voted last week to support this, and that's what my gut still is. I also would like to know that if the strategic vision, like this change for next year, and strategic vision goes on longer, if we waited on this till the strategic vision is done, it'd be too late, I believe, to do this as a possibility for this year. I believe I understand that correct. I don't, my gut, from what I've heard as a teacher, is that this is the right move to make, even though we should have done, I think your point's Andrew, in terms of what the basis of trust, completely spot on. And you point out areas that we could and should have done better. I also really get this 600, almost 700 grand cut, but these are really fast. And I think, Karen, I can't imagine the length of weeks you're putting in. I think this was, and Brian, this was done as quickly as is reasonable. So those are various thoughts on it. If we postpone for a week or two, we could still do this, but I have a sense of like cascading. So I voted to support this last week. I think we should have potentially said, let's put this out and let the community hear and get feedback, and we should be doing it this week or following week. But I haven't heard anything that makes me think that's the wrong thing to do for kids, which is what has to drive me. But I see as a board communication, I'm really hearing some things that we could and should do better. So more just like, how we fix that. And I also think everyone's been articulate and very respectful, and I think that I'm grateful for that.
Thank you, Mr. Holm. Wendy, did you have your hand? No, sorry, I didn't mean that. I thought you had your hand up. But, I just want to add, I mean, it is common during the budget process for things to be voted on. It happens in many different budgets. I'm on many different boards. I just want to clarify, it's not an uncommon practice during budgets. It's a quick process, as I said before, and I'll say it again. There's been, every year I've been on the board, I've been on other boards. This is a quick process. People bring ideas. We're under a timeline to get things out. So I do want to say that. Yep, Mr. Twitch.
Thank you. Yep. Thank you, everyone. Oh, yeah, okay, get a mic that works. Thank you, everyone. Number of aspects to this on students and declines and families and decisions. I used to live up north further and was very happy. But then the district stopped educating one of my sons in the way he needed. And I tried a supers agreement, and there wasn't cooperation from the supers involved. And I moved. We left the town, we went to a different district because of the children. We already have heard and know about people that come to this district because of the qualities of this district, and that's happened over years. And the district I moved to, Dover Foxbrook, we got feedback there too of doctors and others who have brought their families there because of how well the families and the students were treated. We already have, I may have the numbers wrong, but there were over 150 children within our district that are not attending our public schools for various reasons. But I know at least a couple of them, in the preschool at least, are because of our wanting them to go extra distances bad timing and stuff like that. And just as I moved because of my children not getting what they should have been getting, this is something that is a danger. I've also seen in recent years, we're talking about all these budgets that get voted down again and again. I've also seen a district in Maine where it was voted down again and again because it was too draconian and the people of the district were not happy with it. At least that's the way I understood it. So these are things we need to take into consideration in our decisions. I would almost be okay with the moving the kindergarten if we really could see that, unlike what happened to me, that, as I think would be very possible, that our support system, the MTSS, I guess it is, would be able to work with the parents and the students of these ones that are most affected by it in Mount Vernon and Wayne, that to make, well, maybe this can be done differently. Maybe this student can be handled that way, and maybe transportation can be adjusted very carefully, because every time over the decades that this idea of consolidation and this moving the kindergartens is a form of that, a step that I thought was waiting until the strategic planning process. If the allowances can be made to make it work for these families, to protect those students from the bad effects of this, because there are good and bad to it, I appreciate and understand, as Mr. Holman and others have said, the value of a good group of students and for the teaching of them. But we also need to very much acknowledge that this is a very serious effect for these children, youngest children, to be shipped major distances for them. We so often have, as I've said in previous meetings, people that, as was even stated here tonight, that come to our community because there is that school, not only the support, the major qualities of our middle school and high school, but the support of the individual small school. And so it's very hard for me because there are these competing issues, and we can talk about, it'd be great for them to be in a bigger class. We don't disagree with that. I don't think even the parents involved disagree with that. But this uprooting them far from their families, in our perspective, and long transportation and question as to how much. I've talked with some people about how the plan is that if children are going a long distance, especially the small ones, there'll be bus monitors, there'll be extra adults carefully trained and able to be sure that these youngest children are safe on these buses. I have not gotten that that's in the plans for this coming year, and so that would be a concern of mine. What are we doing to make sure that this plan that is really good in some ways addresses the problems and concerns that have been brought up? As it stands, I would tend to vote for this proposition. However, I also, as I've said before, I'm very supportive and trusting in our A team, in our teachers, in our whole school system that we have, that historically has been very supportive of a good education and a good place for the children to grow. So I want to hear further discussion and comment.
Anyone else have anything to add before I get back to Andrew? Okay, Andrew, go ahead. Just trying to give everyone an opportunity.
I'll give you time to think about whether you want to say something. But,
Go ahead.
Just sort of two things I wanted to touch on. I think like something that's come up has been like this was a, we had a lot of dialogue around this process, and there are arguments for it, and I certainly hear that. But I think we need to be careful not to tell parents that we know what is best for their kids better than they do, and that we don't need to listen to their input. We've had a lot of parents come here tonight and say, I don't like this decision. And to me, it's important to, if we say that we're going to respect these parents' input during the strategic planning process, we also need to respect it now. If we come to them and say, yes, I hear what you said, but we thought about it and we're still sure we're right, then why should they trust us through the strategic planning process? And that's my concern here, is that if we don't listen to parents here now, that we undermine the strategic planning process for its entire duration. And so, we may make the same decision later, but I would like to see it happen with parent input.
Was it? Oh, I thought you had something.
No, I do.
Okay, my apologies.
There isn't another way to say that respect doesn't only come through agreement. There isn't a way to say, I've heard you only if I now agree with you. There isn't a way to say, I agree with you, but I may not vote in favor of some of what you wanted while voting so heavily for other things that I know you actually also do want. And you have all said that in so many ways. So there isn't a good way to say that. So I'm going to disagree, Andrew, with the statements that are being made that says if we don't now change our mind, that we don't listen and that we don't care about the kids and that we're not committed to the strategic process and all those things. Because I've actually sat here biting my tongue to say our strategic plan is outdated. It was already due to be done over a year ago. It's not done because we made a budget decision not to have an outside company come in and help us with that because we thought we'd save money and try and do it ourselves. This is my opinion. This is just what I'm saying. So we didn't get to push it all the way through for a whole host of other reasons of things that came to us as a district that we had to address, things that were real fires that had to get taken care of. That process didn't get to be seen through. It was going down the road very well. There were a lot of very engaged people that were part of that, and they were from all over, and we were making ground, and it had to die on the vine. And that's not good. We're sitting here now not having just cut a consultant to a strategic planning process because we didn't want to cut a staff member because that's what was really hot and really passionate. And while we still live in that place that says we don't want to cut staff members unnecessarily and unthoughtfully, that is not what we have done in this go-round. And we are not sitting here with the most difficult choice because we just did any machete math or we just picked something. We picked what we felt was the most reasonable thing based on the input of all the folks that you also cherish in your school and around them. And we've trusted where they've landed. And so my biggest point, not to get lost, is if you don't feel like I vote with you, I absolutely have taken 6 notes of ways that I absolutely care about what you've come to say.
Any further discussion or comments? Go ahead.
A side note that helps me, if as is likely this gets voted down, is that the strategic planning process, very clearly in it, I did read that part, well, I read it all, but focus on that part, says that these are possibilities and all of them are to be considered, including reverting to full kindergarten or preschool through 5th in every elementary school. Another side note, I think of the analysis that was presented to the board, noted the costs, the extra costs from each school. And actually, Wayne already pays most of that in the high payment that we make. So I take quite a view of the claim that Wayne isn't paying for its school. That's it.
Any other discussion, comments? We have a motion and a second on the floor. To remind folks what we're voting on to reverse the motion, the vote we had last week to reinstate the pre-Ks, not pre-Ks, the kindergartens at Mount Vernon and Wayne. So all those in favor? Raise your hand. We have 1, 2. All opposed? Raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Right, did I count that right? No, I missed.
You missed someone.
Yeah, I missed someone. So it's 11, sorry, 11 to 2. 2 to, yeah, the motion fails. Any other discussion?
Move to adjourn.
All right, move to adjourn. Second.